Greetings, we are live. This is Just Be Well, the channel about whole life wellness. I'm Dr. Tom Salt, a medical doctor and functional medicine practitioner.
I'm Elizabeth, a registered nurse and whole life coach.
So we've been working through our program we call Rebalance to Heal, which is really a program for anyone with chronic disease, whether it's, heart disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic Lyme disease, anxiety, PTSD, really any chronic disease. And it's a 6-step program. We've been talking about the 6th step, and today we would just want to amplify how emotions affect our immune system and how we can transform emotions from destructive to adaptive and eventually to helping us thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of times when we think in terms of detoxing, that's kind of a popular word, we think of detoxifying like, heavy metals or pesticides, pollutants. But we forget that our emotions hold so much, they can hold so much toxins in as well. They are toxic. They can be very toxic.
Profoundly toxic, maybe even more toxic than those chemicals at the doses that we're typically
subjecting ourselves to every day.
Yeah, our dose of toxic emotions and toxic beliefs and toxic self-judgment is actually far higher. The dose is far higher than the amount that, of toxic waste or toxic chemicals or whatever that we're really exposed to every day.
Yeah, and there's such a, I totally lost my train of thought. Like it was there and poof,
yep,
it's gone.
Yeah, but it was pretty while it was happening.
It was a great thought too. I was like, yes, and there it goes.
Yeah. So
distractions, that's what I was going to talk about. And
even better.
Yeah, it really fits. Because there's so many distractions nowadays that keep us from having to deal with our emotions. We have distractions all day long, whether, and this right here is one of the biggest distractions, and we can take it with us anywhere, even into the bathroom.
Especially into the bathroom.
Yeah.
Distractions, absolutely. Distractions are not just entertainment. Intentional entertainment is fine. That's not the same as distractions. And, guys typically have 2 emotions. And pissed off, right? How you feeling? How you feeling? I'm pissed, right? Those are the only 2 emotions most guys really display. And it turns out that the language we use, it actually connects parts of our brain. This is called theory of mind. And there's some really interesting research around this where people with limited vocabularies tend to have less ability to predict and understand the actions of others. And the more rich your vocabulary, the more rich the connections within your mind are. So increasing our vocabulary surrounding our emotions is really important. And one of the tools that we have is this wheel with sort of the basic emotions in the center and then outspurts of those, and then the tertiary or third generation of emotions out from there. And unfortunately, most of us are functioning at the level of the reptilian brain in terms of our emotional intelligence. And by broadening our broadening our vocabulary around emotions helps our brain and helps us cope. But then broadening that vocabulary allows us to get underneath that initial reptilian idea of I'm pissed to what does being pissed really mean? Why in this instance am I pissed? What does it mean to be angry?
Usually anger is a great emotion at covering up a lot of underlying emotions. So, why are you angry? Or we'll use anger. We'll continue to use anger. For me, it's always a hard one for me to relate to because I don't get angry.
Relate to your emotion then.
Or fear. Fear is my like go-to emotion.
Yeah.
And you know, really, it's underneath that fear. There's always this sense of like deep caring, and you know, realizing, changing that perspective, and realizing, okay, you know, I'm fearful because I care about this situation. Really lets you go into, okay, you know, why am I fearful? And allows you to kind of have a different perspective and deal with it from that perspective of caring and love as compared to the perspective of anger and fear. So if you can kind of switch yourself to that core emotion, I think it's easier to process, and you're still angry. You're not saying that you're not angry, but...
Right. So anger, as an example, because that's my go-to emotion, it has to do with fear, certainly, and so everything she just said about fear, but there's another piece of it. I'm angry, and why am I angry? I'm not angry about things I don't care about, right? If I don't care about it, why would I be angry about it? I care about things I'm angry about. But there's another layer. What if I care about it, but I'm afraid to confront it? That's another aspect of anger. It's another aspect of fear. I care about this relationship. Something's happening in this relationship that is difficult, and it makes me angry. And it's angering me because, in part, because I am afraid to confront the issue in the relationship, right? So getting clear on anger. I'm angry. I know I'm angry. Okay. You're angry. That's a totally legitimate, beautiful, reasonable human emotion. We're not saying deny your anger. We're not saying deny your fear. We're not saying deny any emotion. What we're saying is try to get underneath that emotion and understand it so that you can, instead of plotting the course of detonation, right, screaming and yelling and being angry or sulking and retreating, you can plot a course to your desired outcome. So when I suddenly realize that my anger or my fear is about deep caring, what do I care about? And if that's what I care about, what is the best path to achieve my goal? Not about the person you're mad at. What's the best path for me to achieve my goal? Can I yell at him? Yeah, I can yell at him. Might feel good for a moment, but will it feel good in 10 minutes? Or will it feel good in an hour or a week? A better path might be to understand what it is I care about so strongly that it's making me mad, and then plot a better course. So, you know, we use the term, you made me mad. You made me mad.
Well, if you went to do this, I wouldn't get angry.
Yeah, that's right. If you didn't do that, I wouldn't have to beat you.
He's obviously joking.
Yes,
but...
I'm joking. But has anybody ever really made you mad?
They've done things to trigger emotions of anger.
Yes, they have.
But that's a tricky question because I know what you want me to say. You want me to say, nobody's never made you mad.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because I want to have the conversation.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Where I feel like, yes, people have done things that I don't know how there would be any other emotion besides anger.
Well, let's look at a utopian world for a moment. We live in a fairly dystopian world, I'm going to say. Let's talk about a utopian world where you were really centered and meditated every day and had this abundant self-love. And now if somebody does something that triggers you, is it really about you?
The thing that they've done? No,
Yeah.
It's about them.
It's about them. So if they are doing things about them, isn't your anger at them an interpretation of their actions as if they are about you? So again, we're allowed to have these emotions. They're beautiful and important emotions because without getting that well of anger or that well of fear or that well of sadness, we're unaware of what's going on in our environment. So it's not that we shouldn't have these emotions. We do have these emotions. The question is, what is the best service these emotions can have for us? So, yeah, I mean, it's so, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's so seductive to say, you made me mad. But the truth is, I interpreted your actions as if they had some relevance to me, when in fact, you said so-and-so. Okay, well, yep, I said that, but is it true? Is it true that I said your hair is messy, and that made you mad? Is it true that your hair is messy, or is it true that your hair is made exactly the way you meant it to be, and that's a look that you were trying to achieve? So, to the extent that it's true, okay, well, it's just information. To the extent that it's my value judgment against you, it's irrelevant. If you're really centered within your own soul, it's irrelevant. Not to mean you're selfish within your own soul, meaning that you have enough self-love to realize that anyone else's opinion about your intentional act is not very important. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it made sense.
Am I pissing you off?
No. Because when I think of getting angry, typically it's actually not when somebody does something to me. It's when somebody does something to someone I care about, like my children. So, it creates...
Yeah, but that's still just the same extension. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mother bear. Mm-hmm. The mother bear stands on her back feet and, roars. Mm-hmm. Sure, and that's a normal human emotion. But then why are you getting mad? Because you care deeply about your children. Mm-hmm. So screaming and yelling at the person that were mean to your kids, or teaching your children greater resilience, which is the better choice.
Yes, and I'm not even talking about what you do with it when you're angry. I think that's a whole separate issue. I'm talking about the feeling of anger itself rising within me. Yeah. I feel like there's a purpose to that anger.
Agreed.
And so...
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. There is a purpose to that emotion. We shouldn't deny that emotion. We should live that emotion. But then in that moment between stimulus and response, that little moment, we have some choices to make. So somebody walking down the street tells your kid with purple hair that they're disgusting. And of course the truck needs to use his air brakes, which is illegal at that point in their journey. But anyway, your kid with purple hair gets told off by some guy who thinks that everybody with purple hair is a loser. And so you have a choice in that moment between finding out that happened and what you do. Of course, anger rises because you know your child, and you may know them to be exactly what the person said, or you may know them to be something totally different from what the person said. And in any event, you have that moment of clarity, and you can exercise that moment when that anger wells. I'm angry. Okay, that hopefully, if you do these insight trainings and we've done it right, that instant of clarity, that brings us to ourself. And remember earlier on in the insight training, we named and claimed ourself as that place of infinite love, that place of beatific abyss, I call it. Beatific meaning holy bliss, and abyss meaning endless. So we claim that. And then from that space of this infinite love, this infinite connection, we ask, what is the path to attain the goal? Now, I have no control over anyone but me, and I have minimal influence over anyone but me. But somebody I do have influence over, at least some, are my children. So I can scream at the guy who said the nasty things, or I can teach my children greater emotional resilience. And so that's really, we're talking about after the anger wells up. And after the anger wells up, hopefully that triggers us. It reminds us, and instead of it reminding us to get angry and punch the person, it reminds us
Right, which I think most people won't do.
well, but
Yeah.
that's the illogical extreme, right? And I'm suggesting that what I'm recommending and what spiritual leaders recommend is the other illogical extreme, not pacifism, but thoughtfulism with your response. And by being able to call forth that deep level of heart-mind presence, you can have a better conversation with yourself and your loved ones about what that anger really is about.
Okay.
And she's not buying it.
No, I'm actually not, but that's okay.
Well, tell me what
We
you
can
don't buy
have
about it.
different views.
Tell me, yeah, absolutely. Tell me what you don't buy about it.
Well, I think that, and it depends what you're talking about, like how do you respond? You say you're responding from that point of caring, and for me, part of it, okay, if I'm angry about something, so I'm not angry about, this is like something big for me. If I'm going to be angry, because I don't get angry very often, so when you talk about anger, for me, it's different than if you were talking about like fear. So if I'm angry about something, it's not because somebody made fun of my kid because their hair is purple. It's because somebody did something that actually harmed my child. And, I think that there's a point of, okay, what part of are you saying angry is, okay, you're not angry, I'm going to, sit there and just say loving, caring.
I never said you weren't angry, but I never said you weren't angry.
Right. No, but I'm saying, like, how do you? Okay, you're saying, about not getting angry, but then how do you deal with that emotion then, or how do you emote that experience? If it's something that you can legitimately be angry about, and that you should, perhaps, stick up for somebody over, and you can do that in a constructive way as well, but then isn't sticking up for somebody, to me, then what you're saying is that means that I can't do that. Or if
I'm
I
not
do,
saying that.
it has to be in like a very,
No, I'm not saying
you shouldn't have done that, sweetheart, because...
Sometimes the right thing to do is to step in the middle. Sometimes the right thing to do is to step in the middle. But where are you coming from? Is anger the real thing, or is that just the reptilian response? So somebody, there's a school shooting and your kid gets shot. I can't imagine anything more horrific. And it has happened. And some families in those crises, after reflection, they find forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't mean it's all okay. It doesn't mean, oh, it's okay that you shot my kid. Come on over for dinner. I would probably avoid that person for the rest of my life and be quite happy that they were locked up forever, right? But what it does mean is to unlock yourself from those corrosive and destructive emotions. And so there are instances of people with such capacity to forgive and heal that they become the perpetrator's advocate and help them heal. Because the person who did the school shooting, they're not well.
Right, and I mean, that's another extreme. I'm just trying to think into my day-to-day life, how does one deal with anger then? Like something that we would...
Whoops, I keep kicking the tripod. I should have turned it a different way.
Or deal with your emotions. How do you deal with your emotions then if...
Okay, well, I'm really pissed off. I am really, 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 really angry. What do I do about this? Anger. What? Well, why am I so freaking angry? Why am I so freaking angry? Why am I so freaking angry? What is going on?
do it.
Right? So it's just like this grinding away with it, right? I'm scaring you, I'm sorry.
I think I'm go to the next room.
but I'm grinding on this anger, but I'm digging. And as I dig, I start to uncover things, and I uncover, why am I angry? Well, I'm angry because this person marginalized me. this person made me feel less than. I'm angry because this person made my kid feel less than. I'm angry because I'm always the one left holding the bag. You know, I'm always the one who's the only person in the group willing to take the responsibility. And everybody else drops the responsibility and runs off. Whatever it is, you know, that's a whole bunch of stuff, right? All my stuff.
Right, yeah, and I think one thing that we can all probably relate to with anger right now is the anger that's going on in social media with all the political stuff.
Right.
So I think that's a good example on how do you deal with that anger of these people like calling names to these other people and, you know.
So why am I angry about it? Because I care. Well, what is it I care about? I care about civility. So is the best response for me? So I got into a little thing because somebody wrote a banner and it said, immune systems in pandemics. Okay, well then why are there 200,000 people dead? Right? It's a little more complex than that. We have, like, you know, maybe if it said healthy, robust immune system in pandemics, yeah, maybe that's true, and maybe that requires a whole thing, right? It requires addressing poverty, it requires addressing healthcare access, it requires food quality issues, it requires a whole bunch of stuff, right? It's big. So I care deeply. So I said, well, gosh, I think that's kind of a small issue. You know, I think that's too simplistic. And I should have just stayed out of it, but I said it's too simplistic. And I got like all these negative, oh, you don't know, this whole thing. And people are talking about how those numbers are fake and, you know, it's like crazy town. So what do? Do I type in, you're all a bunch of morons? How's that help? I don't think it does. I pointed them to the CDC. I said, well, if the CDC is fake news, then we're really in trouble. I pointed them to Johns Hopkins University. If Johns Hopkins University is fake news, then all of society is really in trouble, right? I mean, there have to be some facts that we can agree on. And if there are no facts, and unfortunately that's where we are today, there are no facts that we can agree on. Everybody has their own set of facts, which allows them to come to their own conclusion. But as even a Fox commentator once said, you can't have there are no such thing as alternative facts, right? So we need to respond with something other than anger. Yeah, did that make me angry? It did, but do I respond with vitriol like was being spewed in my direction? I wanted to. I really wanted to.
Yeah, but Yolanda said, well, we don't like angry Dr. Sult. So I don't like angry Dr. Sult either.
Yeah, well, we all get angry, don't we?
Yeah.
But the question is, we're going to get angry. What are you going to do about it?
Yep, and you're going to have hard emotions, and how are you going to, you know,
Whatever
deal with those emotions in a healthy way? And really it comes down to sitting in those emotions when we're having those hard feelings. Or perhaps it's not something that's acute, you know, in your environment right now. Maybe it's just like a subtle emotion that you're using these distractions to, you know, kind of keep yourself away from. Well, eventually that emotion is going to cause other issues. You know, emotional health is directly correlated to your physical health.
And we're really talking about the same thing. You say sit in it. And I say, have it, and then there's this gap, this moment in time when you realize you're angry, and this whole process is training us to call forth this more universally connected spiritual self and respond from that place. And I'm gonna challenge you to tell me a time when you were really fearful and you went into that deep heart mind connected space and the response from that space wasn't way better than the anger that you started with.
Well, you started with saying fear, because for me, when anger comes up, anger's not an issue for me, I don't feel.
That's why I said fear.
Yeah, but then you ended in anger, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
We're talking
Fear.
about my fear here, or perhaps it's, you know, kind of this feeling. I often get this feeling in the pit of my stomach. And for a long time there, I always attributed, or I often attributed this feeling in the gut of my stomach
often.
as like, you know, my gut instinct, my intuition.
And sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is, but I learned I have to be careful with that. I have, when I get that gnawing feeling in my gut, I have to sit with that feeling and really ask it, okay, what are you trying to tell me? And a lot of times the first thing I hear is fear, where really that emotion I'm feeling is fear. It's not, in fact, something that is occurring as my perception says it's occurring. I'm seeing it from that spot of fear, and that feeling is fear. So as soon as I sit in it and I ask myself about that emotion or that feeling that I'm having, and I get those answers, then that's when I have that tinge of real instinct, like, yes, this is correct. I am actually fearful about this situation. And it's the fear, that spot of fear, that I am reacting from, instead of, sitting in a spot and not reacting, but, being proactive in a state of more.
But then the next question is, why are you afraid?
Typically, for me, I'm afraid of a scenario that, with my history in medicine and emergency medicine, I, saw lots of things for a long time, a decade, that, it triggers up feelings of that, or maybe it's something that I've gone through in the past. And I'm fearful, the thing that I find most fearful is that my past is going to repeat itself. So I have to continually, really zoom in on those lessons.
Yeah, so once you understand what you're fearful of, that gives you an opportunity to make real decisions about the real issue. And that's the point of these emotional insight trainings, is to get you to a place where you really analyze, why am I having this emotion? Not I shouldn't have this emotion. You absolutely should have the emotion.
You're having it for a reason, even if it is fear-based. I mean, you're having it, and denying it is the worst thing you can do.
Yes, denying it is destructive. But sitting in it, to use your word, and then asking the questions, why am I fearful right now? And then getting to that. And, there's a million reasons. I got bit when I was a kid, so now I'm afraid of dogs. So when I see a dog, this fear wells up. Okay, well, let's sit with that fear for a minute and get clear on that it's a memory from childhood. And
that's a lot of times where that sensory kit comes into play for me. It brings me to the present and not my past. It reminds me that I'm here.
Step 5, I think, was the sensory integration kit. So, right, and this whole thing builds, right? We build from, are we losing a bunch of things here? Oh, go ahead.
Yolanda, she says, when I get upset or angry, I sometimes need time to step away to calm down, process, and really consider the trigger on why I'm feeling this way and how best to approach it from a different space. I do that a lot too, Yolanda. I used to actually get in my car and drive. And, for a moment there, I was kind of hard on myself, like, oh, I'm running away. But really, removing yourself and, kind of working through it so you're not reacting in the situation, I think that plays a huge role.
Yeah. I think sometimes physical space can have you the emotional space to have clarity. And again, there's the whole process of these insight trainings is to train yourself to have that moment of clarity. Is to well up, to bring, to call forth. Remember that, what is it, the 9th insight training, or maybe it's the 10th, is to think about a time or a situation that triggers sort of a spontaneous negative emotion, right? And to call forth this heart mind, this deep heart mind space, and deal with it from that space. And with the more practice we have, the better we are. And ultimately, the idea that this or this is what wells up that space of deep heart-mind thinking. And by having that, the very notion of that deep clarity of anger or fear being the thing that brings you to this infinite love space becomes the next step in being able to stop and say, okay, well, I'm really angry. Why am I angry? Or I'm really fearful. What am I fearful about? And therefore, now that I understand that in a deeper way, what is the best course for me to get where I'm trying to go? And if I'm really angry with my spouse, and my knee jerk is to yell back, even though I'm being yelled at, I'm totally justified, right? On every sociological level, I'm totally justified to just yell at you. But is that what's going to further?
I feel like he's talking to me.
But is that
kind of close?
Is that what's going to further my relationship? Yeah, that's right. Is that what's going to further my relationship? Is yelling back going to further my relationship, or is that just going to escalate things out of control? So, it becomes a matter of self-discipline and self-love. Self-love, because I now realize that yelling back isn't what gets me where I want to go, which is a deeper, more fulfilling relationship. So does that mean you just roll over like a possum? No, that's not what I'm talking about at all.
Or don't say anything at all?
Or don't say, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you have the hard conversation, the hard, real, emotional conversation about why. And it's not about you, it's about I. I find it very difficult when you cut me off when I'm trying to explain how I feel. Or I feel really belittled when you say things like that about me. In the future, I would appreciate it if you did X instead, right? These are very hard conversations. And sometimes it requires the space, both physical and emotional, to let everybody calm down, to come back and have those conversations. So it's not about giving up. It's not about taking it. It's not about being codependent about it. It's being interdependent and emotionally intelligent.
And it's really about, diving deeper into it.
Yep.
And, when it has to do with somebody else or a relationship, maybe it's diving in deeper separately. So you ask yourself, and I say sit in the emotions, it's not sitting around and swirling in them and ruminating on it. It's sitting and asking yourself why you have the emotion, and really it brings you to the next level and to the next level. And finally you find yourself, beneath all of the emotions. And that's
the
where
real core
to the real core
root.
With no emotion. And that's where you hear the real answers that help you, see those emotions in just a different way.
Yes. I love that. It was beautiful. That's what I'm trying to say, but she is so much more eloquent.
Well, thank you.
So, what do we have there? I think she has another pressing issue. So I think that was the 11th and 12th koan. The 11th and 12th insight training, the emotional insight trainings.
Which is the sixth step.
Which is the sixth step.
Of the rebalance to heal.
Right. So this is the graduate school process. You don't start here. You start way back at 1,
and
right?
it allows you to be able to
get here.
Yeah.
And it's a journey because despite best intentions, I will tell you that I can open my eyes from meditation and then instantly be set off to be upset about something that happened somewhere, someplace. So it's a lifelong thing. But that the distance between stimulus and response is in an untrained mind very tight. But with time, it expands until even though it's milliseconds in time duration, it expands to allow deliberation before response. And that's what we're really
and it brings you
to
to a totally different response.
Yeah.
Most of the time. I mean, it does.
Yep.
And it allows you to effectively deal with those emotions in a healthy way.
Yeah. And that is the point, is how do we deal with our emotions in the most healthy way so that they don't become destructive, but in fact become constructive. Yeah, because as we've talked about at length, sad, mad, down emotions suppress the immune system. Up, happy, glad, love emotions improve immune responses. And we're trying to improve our immune response because Rebalance to Heal is about getting the rest of the way home with your chronic illness. All right, I think that's it. Let's see if there's any other respondents. No? All right, so we will see you next week. I think we're going to start a journey down the infinitely large rabbit hole that is called chronic Lyme disease. Lots and lots. I like to say when I'm lecturing on this topic for the Institute for Functional Medicine that chronic Lyme disease is a master class in functional medicine. It requires every tool of functional medicine to be applied expertly to really get the job done. You know, every provider gets some improvement with Lyme. Few get resolution with Lyme. And functional medicine gives us not just a bunch of random tools, but a system that can be applied to anyone to get a truly universally unique approach for that one individual and help them recover. We're using Lyme as the tool here, but it could be any chronic disease. So next time we start Lyme disease. We'll see you next. I guess it's going to be late next week too. Is that true?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, 10 a.m. Central Time. And if noon is better or some other time of the day is better, leave it in the comments, and we'll try to accommodate that. All right, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for
Bye.
watching, Jeannie.
Yeah.
And everyone else.
And everyone else.
Bye.